Hi, we're Quentin Piers Volumes. My name is James, and it is the second day of September, Labor Day. Happy Labor Day to my American friends. I hope you have the day off to celebrate. Uh, I have. I've been having a good day. Louise and I and my wife went down to the park. We had a little walk. It was very nice. And yes, well, something interesting happened yesterday. I'll get to that. I'll get to that. So I'm going to talk about what I read in August and what I'm planning to read in September. So, August spent a good deal of time reading Arthur Ashe's biography by Raymond Arsenal. I finished that the other day. Fantastic, full length, 600 plus page biography. Goes through all the details of his life. As it got towards the end, if you don't know some of the details about the turns that his life took towards the end, he died rather young. I don't know if it's a spoiler to say, but it kind of some tragic events. But he was always so driven, and he's really, I think, for just about anyone, could be a role model. I mean, he just always kept his mind on what was important to him, and thought about people other than himself. Um, and One interesting detail from late in the book is that the American heavyweight boxer Mike Tyson, when he went to prison, he got a tattoo of Arthur Ashe's face with the title of Ashe's autobiography, Days of Grace, on it, to kind of remind him of something that he should be, uh, someone he should be thinking of, to inspire him to improve his behavior. So that was interesting to me. And he was, as you may know if you remember him, known for being kind of a very cool character. Cool, not like Fonzie cool, but like not demonstrably. He wouldn't have temper tantrums and fits of pique the way that some famous people would. He kept himself under control, and partly this was his upbringing. His father was a very kind of straight and narrow person, and it was also the time and place that he grew up was a survival. It was important for survival for a black man not to be seen as angry and threatening and whatnot. So he always kept his calm. And then, after he had he started to develop some health problems that kept him off the court, that kind of brought his professional tennis career to an end. He got a call from someone who had been the captain of the Davis Cup team. Now, the Davis Cup is the sort of they call it the Olympics of tennis. I think they do have tennis in the Olympics now, but they didn't at the time and for a long time. And it was also every year, but it would be national teams that would compete against other national teams. And the captain of the team is not is usually, I guess it would usually have been a former player, but not someone who actually competed, but sort of was a manager, a coach for the American team. So this the previous the last Davis Cup captain called him up and offered, said, I can't deal with these with the tempers on these players anymore. Do you want to be the captain? And people thought, well, Arthur Ashe, respected player, former Davis Cup team member, won Wimbledon, known for his kind of cool head. He'd be a good coach. So he signed up, and he had Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe on his team, and these are players that even today are remembered for having bad tempers, for being rude and unruly on the court. And it so the way that he managed or tried to manage them is really something interesting to read about. He says at one point, sometimes I people talk about how cool I am. I wish I could just go out on the court and just have a fit like John McEnroe does. um, but anyway, so that was interesting. Um, worth reading about. At least read the Wikipedia entry about Arthur Ashe. Fascinating guy. Um, and I don't think I'm going to try and read his 3-volume history of African Americans in sport, called Hard Road to Glory. But if I see a volume at the thrift store, I'll probably pick it up. So that was the main thing that I was reading. I also read, as I said earlier in the month, I think I read Heavy this month by Kiese Lehman, which is a memoir by an English writing instructor from Mississippi, and some of his unusual experiences growing up. His mother was a brilliant woman. He had a lot of struggles with various demons, and then became an adjunct English instructor, which that's not going to help anything. Eventually, his career kind of took off. He became I think he's now a professor with tenure at the University of Mississippi. So, mixed blessing, I guess. But yeah, good for him. Anyway, so that's Heavy by Kiese Lehman, which was one from the Times 100 list. Another was Exit West by Mohsin Hamid, which was a novel and a brief little thing, but really good. Kind of I guess you would say it's magical realism in that most of it is governed by the rules of realistic depiction, but it has this magical element where suddenly in the world certain doors become portals to other places on the earth. So you can go in the back of your closet and come out in Australia. And it's about what would happen if these things started to happen and people from, say, Afghanistan started showing up in France or Southern California in large numbers. But it's, despite that kind of that element, it remains focused on the people and their experiences and their relationship, in particular, a young couple and what happens to them. Let's see. I also read, and I talked about this in more detail earlier, The Member of the Wedding by Carson McCullers. Why am I blocking Louise? And as I said, it was not my favorite McCullers, but still, it's a good read. It has a lot of cool description. It's got a strong female POV character, and this story was also turned by McCullers into a script for a play. I got from Libby an audio version of that play, which I started listening to, and it was recorded like from a performance in a theater. It wasn't working for me. I listened to about half an hour and I jettisoned it. There's something about recorded theater without being there and seeing it. It always sounds a little bit kind of overdone. So it wasn't working for me. But if I can find a good YouTube video and I'm in the mood, I will check it out. I know there's also a film version of this, which maybe if you've seen it, let me know. I'm curious. Okay. I told you about Evicted by Matthew Desmond, which was I read on the Kindle about eviction in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, from about 2016. I think it came out, and that's a sociology book, but mostly narrative, based on people who live in a couple of homes rented out by a couple of different landlords, and how they eventually lose the right to stay where they are and are kicked out, and what becomes of them afterwards. So as you can imagine, some of them do, their fates are different. Some do relatively okay and bounce back and maybe get to a better place in some kind of. It's the beginning of a long, slow, sad descent, and it's that is worth reading if you have not. So I also read Orlando by Virginia Woolf. This was on my list for the year of things that on my very first video, what I was going to read this year, and now I've done it. So there, if you were doubting me, I have done it. I read this Orlando, a story that I first became familiar with from the film from 1992, I think, with Tilda Swinton. I think that was the first movie I ever saw Tilda Swinton in. It made quite an impression on me. It took me this long to actually get to this book. I love Virginia Woolf. When I finished reading her, I find her slow and difficult going and this is considered by many to be like her kind of breeziest read, but it's still a bit it's slow going for me, although I do find it rewarding. And probably if you're a bookish person, you'll enjoy sections of it that involve Orlando's attempt to become a writer and his dealings with a character named Nicholas Green, who is another writer and critic whom Orlando hires. No, this is in the Elizabethan era, and he hires Nicholas Green to kind of mentor him a bit. Nicholas Green says, there's just no good writers in England anymore. And Orlando's like, well, what about Ben Jonson and Marlowe and Shakespeare and yeah. Nicholas Green kind of one by one goes through about how they're not as good as Cicero was or whatever. And then Orlando, who is a noble man at the time, he's I think a baron at this point in the story, and he gives Nicholas Green an annuity or an allowance. He becomes a patron to him, and Green turns around and writes I think it's a poem that satirizes Orlando, and that becomes a big hit. And so that's a little funny. Orlando gets to be an ambassador to Turkey and falls in with some gypsies, has a bunch of adventures, becomes a different sex, travels back to England, eventually gets married to, let me see if I can remember the name, it's Marmaduke Bonforth Sheldrake. It's a very strange name. Anyway, I should have prepared a little better for my discussion of Orlando. I was going to do a review of this book, but life has been a little busy for me. So, but yeah, if this is definitely a very curious volume, and I recommend you at least give it a try. It's really, I marked off a section that is eligible to be about dogs, and I wanted to read that to you. So there's a spaniel here. Is this, she asked, but there was none to answer. Is this, she finished her sentence all the same, what people call life? The spaniel raised her forepaw in token of sympathy. The spaniel licked Orlando with her tongue. Orlando stroked the spaniel with her hand. Orlando kissed the spaniel with her lips. In short, there was the truest sympathy between them that can be between a dog and its mistress, and yet it cannot be denied that the dumbness of animals is a great impediment to the refinements of intercourse. They wag their tails, they bow the front part of their body and elevate the hind, they roll, they jump, they paw, they whine, they bark, they slobber, they have all sorts of ceremonies and artifices of their own. But the whole thing is of no avail, since speak they cannot. Such was her quarrel, she thought, setting the dog gently on the floor with the great people at Arlington House. They too wag their tails, bow, roll, jump, paw, and slobber, but talk they cannot. All these months that I've been out in the world, said Orlando, pitching one stocking across the room, I've heard nothing but what Pippin might have said. I'm cold, I'm happy, I'm hungry, I've caught a mouse, I've buried a bone, Please Kiss My Nose, and it was not enough. So Arlington House. Orlando is having an experience, kind of like the narrator of Proust does in the Guermantes way, where he's realizing that these sophisticated, fancy people, they have very little to say. They're no more interesting than the dog. And in fact, I would say often the dog is more interesting. So let's see, what else do I have? Those are the things that I read in August. What am I doing in September? Well, I said in August I was going to read Dune Messiah. I already started Dune Messiah. I'm about a quarter of the way into this. And it continues the story of Paul Atreides. I think it's like about 10 years into the future. So Paul Atreides has married the Princess Irulan, who was writing all those bits in Dune, the chapter headings in Dune. His younger sister Alia is he's grown, and he's the emperor of the universe or something like that. And similar to the start of Dune, there is a plot. There was in the beginning of Dune, and this is not a spoiler because this is revealed in the first two chapters of Dune, the first book, that there's a plot against Duke Atreides, Leto Atreides in that book, and it's revealed who's behind the plot, what it is, who the traitor is. It's all laid out, so that's not a spoiler. And here too, you find out that there's a plot against Paul Atreides and who's involved in it, who the conspirators are. So it'll be interesting to see if it plays out that way, or if Frank Herbert throws a curve. There's already been a couple of curveballs, but I'm really enjoying this. And I'm not if you watch this channel, I don't read a lot of science fiction, but this is, it's intrigue. It's more of a fantasy with a lot of espionage elements to it. So it's really good. I'm also reading still a few poems at a time. The selected poems of Randall Jarrell, the great North Carolina poet who has a lot of poems about his experience during World War II. And I'll probably read something from this on Thursday. What else do I have on tap? So here's one that is another from my list at the beginning of the year. I've held it up a bunch of times and said I'm going to read this one. And every time Libro Paradiso usually says, you got to get to that one, it's good. This month I'm going to read this one, The Good Soldier by Ford Madox Ford. It's a favorite of one of my top commenters, Libro Paradiso, also of Jack Edwards. If the two of those guys agree on this book, it's got to be worth reading. So there's that. And also, I'm very excited about this. Ink, The Indelible J. Mayo Williams by Clifford R. Murphy. This is a biography of Mayo Williams. You may not have heard of him, but he was both an NFL player and a record producer in the early 20th century. Produced a lot of records of early blues musicians, and the author is a friend of mine from grad school. So, I want to give that a try. This is from the University of Illinois Press, which publishes a lot of great books on American popular and folk music. Unlike a lot of academic presses, their books are usually, they come out in a paperback edition that is affordable, so you can actually get one if you're curious. I'm also this is a trilogy by Jan Fosse. I picked this up earlier in the year. I read about 10 pages. It's very Dore and Scandinavian, so I may come back to it and give it a try. This month is the the month of September is the Shakespeare month. There's a Shakespeare event on BookTube, people called Shake-Timber, where people will read Shakespeare and make videos about their Shakespeare uh, reading. I will probably read a couple of Shakespeare's. I'll probably go along with. So this is organized by Old Blues Chapter and Verse and Books I'm Not Reading and Day of Small Things. Those are the three channels that that kind of spearhead host the Shake-Timber event. So probably I'll at least give Lear a read and maybe The Tempest. Lear is, you know, most people have a favorite, tends to be Lear or Hamlet. I'm kind of a Hamlet guy, but I need to give Lear a little more attention, I think. So probably I'll read Lear, and I'll definitely be doing the Shakespeare Journey tag maybe tomorrow, maybe later on. I've got some things to say about that. I remember a year ago watching BookTube before I had started my channel, and I saw people doing that tag, and I said, that looks like fun. I think I might want to start a BookTube channel. I almost wanted to just make a video doing that tag because I liked it so much. What else has happened in the month of August was, it was Garb August. I didn't do anything. That's not my kind of thing. But I did start making some Poetry Thursday videos, which typically were not very well viewed, but I did enjoy them. I really liked reading those, so I think I'm going to continue. Maybe not every Thursday, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I really liked, you know, having a reason to go find a poem and read it out loud to you, and share some things that maybe you have not heard of before, and see what people think of them. You know, some of my favorites that kind of kick around in my head, but no one else knows. Like the yeah. So that's what I gotta say about that. Oh, all right. So here's another thing that I started reading, and here's a little story from my domestic life. My wife and I sometimes like to do a jigsaw puzzle. We were doing one yesterday, and it was a jigsaw puzzle of a picture of banned books, like two stacks of books. So they were all like spines of books, and it was like a drawing of pretty well known like cover designs of these books, you know, and it had Catcher in the Rye and the 1619 Project and 1984, Things You Would Expect, and then a lot of newer books that are like Gender, Queer, and Mouse, things that have been banned more recently, and we're doing this puzzle, and my wife says, Bridge to Terabithia is banned. Why on earth is that banned? I said, I don't know. I've never read it, and she said, well, it was one of my favorites when I was a kid. I read it a bunch of times. I don't know what on earth they would ban that for. And I said, well, that's interesting. So I went on my Kindle, and you can get it on Kindle Unlimited, Bridge to Terabithia. It's a short, like, I guess, kids book, or would have been a middle grade or young adult book. I don't know. The main character is in 5th grade, for whatever that tells you. So I downloaded it onto my Kindle, and I was reading it last night. And I mean, as far as I can tell, I have no idea why this book would be banned. It's the most wholesome thing imaginable. There's it begins with the protagonist waking up extra early, you know, but after his father's left because he doesn't want to get caught. It's like, was he doing something sneaky or bad? No, he's going out to practice running in a field. That's how wholesome this book is. And he has this secret thing for drawing cartoons of animals, that he doesn't want anyone to know about. Yeah, I mean, all right, look, I just started. Who knows what happens later on? But I'm actually, so far I like the way it's written. I want to keep going. So all right. So I'm reading Bridge to Terabithia also. So I'll tell you more about that later. Maybe I'll be scandalized. I'll come back like, can you imagine they let kids read this thing? He's secretly practicing running. Ah, kids are going to get the wrong idea. They're going to be getting up and going out for jogs in the morning. All right, that's all I got to say about that. But thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again later.